Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Veg Grower Podcast. My name's Richard and I want to encourage and inspire you to grow more of your own food in whatever space you have available. And I do this by sharing exactly what's been going on in my own allotment and my own kitchen garden here in Littlehampton on the south coast of the United Kingdom. I've been growing my own food for over 30 years, but I still learn something new every single day. Now, coming up this week, I'm going to be discussing aphids with you as a problem I've noticed on some of my young seedlings. Before that, we head down to the allotment where, well, lots of progress has been going on with getting the allotment ready for really growing. But we start this week off in the kitchen garden. Well, I'm now out in the kitchen garden where we're starting this week. I've got to say, the sun is shining, the wind is a bit blowy here. Now, we've had a really good week in the kitchen garden. The weather has, of course, helped, but we have also managed to accomplish quite a few things. One of the big things that I did was on Friday morning, my hairdresser was coming round to cut my hair, and I was in a bit of a limbo. It's that time where you're waiting for an appointment or something to happen. There's not enough time to go and really do anything, but you want to find something to do. Well, I decided I was just going to pop out into the garden and just clear a few weeds. So I pulled on my gardening gloves and I just started at one end of the garden, working my way through, picking out any weeds to go in the compost bin. Now, this didn't take too long. What I try and do is keep on top of the weeding by doing it regularly, i.e. daily, but not spending long in doing it. And I always start in the same area, the bottom of the garden, and work my way back. This generally means that the back of the garden gets more weedy, but the front of the garden, because we're doing it there every single day, takes less and less time. So it gradually, we find ourselves getting on top of the weeding because it just keeps moving further and further back. And because I do it daily, it really does make a big difference. And at this time of year, I'm sure you've noticed a lot of our gardens are growing lots of weeds. So keeping on top of it, very, very important. Now, the great thing is, because I only had a few spare minutes to tackle this job, I got on top of it really, really quickly. But one of the big things that I noticed was the amount of bees that were buzzing around some of my brassicas that have gone to flower. Now, I had a collection of plants that we've harvested plenty of vegetables from. These were things like our Brussels sprouts, our kale, our cabbages, our cauliflower. We've harvested all our vegetables from those, but I left them in the ground in order to let them create some flowers. And the main reason for this is that I want to save seeds for more of our plants this year. I really want to try and save a lot more seeds. So I let these go to flower. And what I noticed was there was a huge abundance of bees and other pollinating insects flying around these flowers and doing their job. Now, as you know, bees are a big subject for me this year, something I am looking into with great admiration. I want to keep my own honeybees. So seeing this and a very simple difference that we've made just by allowing some plants go to flower and how that has encouraged more bees into our garden goes to show a little thing makes a big difference. Now, one of my other big jobs that I've done this week has been my large VegePod. I've got 3 VegePods in my garden. The small, which I use for herbs, the medium, which I generally use for cut and come again salad leaves, and then my large one, which I use for just general gardening. Now, the VegePod is a raised vegetable garden bed. It is up at waist height, it's easy to work on, it has a bit of a well so it holds onto water really, really well, and it has an integrated watering system as well as a mesh cover to help keep away any of our pests. Well, the small and medium one I moved back about a metre last year off of our patio area into just in front of my shed basically, and I wanted to do the large one, but at the time it was very, very heavy because it's full of compost and everything, but it was also full of vegetables. Well, I opened it up and I harvested the last of the beetroot and the parsnips from that VegePod, and then I looked at it and I thought, if I dig out all that compost, we'll put it in buckets, I can then move this large VegePod. And that's what I did. I dug out all the compost, pull it into buckets to one side, and me and my wife together moved the large VegePod back a metre, freeing up our patio area. Now, all the compost, of course, got reused. I added in some fresh perlite, added in the compost, and I topped it off with some fresh compost as well, which means that this VegePod is now ready for growing in. And what I've done is I've been sowing some carrots, I've sown some parsnips, I've also transplanted some beetroot and a few other items into the VegePod as well. So basically, we have got ourselves a system ready for growing. The VegePod is ready to grow, and it has started growing. As I said, seeds are going in there and other plants as well. Now for me, this is a great start to the season. It means we're really underway and things are moving ahead. Now, a final job that I have been doing this week is a big job actually. It's been a manic sowing week. This is a time of year where we really do need to sow lots and lots of our plants, and I have been sowing like mad. Things like our tender plants, our pumpkins, our melons, our courgettes, our other squash plants, as well as beans, French runner, cannellini beans, good mixture of different beans. We have been sowing like mad, and this has given us off to a very, very good start. There's still lots of more things that we can sow, but it means that we really are on a promising start to this season. Now, talking of sowing seeds, one of the other things that follows with sowing seeds is, of course, potting on plants and moving them along, which has also been taking up a lot of time. Basically allowing my young seedlings to get into bigger and bigger pots and to give them more and more space. Now, this is pretty standard. I try and do this every day. I'll just do one or two plants every single day, putting them on and moving them along. Last week I mentioned that my cold frame, I moved my large shelved cold frame to in front of my greenhouse, and that's where we've been moving a lot of my young plants along. Well, today, funny enough, I noticed, I think it's down to this strong winds, that the lid has been damaged in somehow. I'm a little annoyed about this, I'll be honest, because I quite like this cold frame, but it doesn't surprise me at the same time. These cold frames are not the strongest things on the planet, to be honest. My smaller cold frame is much, much stronger than I got from B&Q, but this one I got from Home Base. The wood did feel quite flimsy to me, and I'm a little disappointed that the top has broken away. I probably will be able to fix it, but I'm still a little disappointed. I do have my veg truck grow frame as well, which is very similar, shelved, 4-tier shelved system, which might well take its place instead, but more on that in the future. I'm just disappointed that my cold frame has broken. Well, it has been a productive week in the kitchen garden, but what's been going on down on the allotment? Let's find out in just a moment. In the meantime, let's find out what's been going on in the Supporters Club this week. Well, I hope you are enjoying this podcast so far, and if you are, you know what I'm going to ask you, please leave a rate and review on your podcast provider. It only takes you a few seconds, but it means well to us. It helps us get found by more people who might also be interested in learning more about how to grow their own food. But added to that, if you are also enjoying this podcast and you want to help support us financially, then please consider becoming a member of the Veg Grower Podcast Supporters Club. For just £5 a month, you help keep this podcast running, you help keep the wheels turning and help keep it growing. But in return for your £5, you get access to extra behind-the-scenes podcasts that give you a bit of an idea what's going on here at the Veg Grower Podcast HQ. Added to that, once a month you will also receive our seed pack through your letterbox, and that seed pack contains a collection of seeds that I've specifically chosen to be sown in that very month. So those seeds are not hanging around waiting to be sown, they can be sown in that very month.
And along with the seeds, you also get a copy of our mini newspaper, which gives you a few instructions on how to sow those seeds, but it's also a bit of a tool. It gives you the opportunity to take down notes, list a few tasks that you want to do, keep a track of what you've harvested. It's become a tool that even I use. And you get all that for just £5 a month. Now, as an example, over this last week we have sown some mustard, which is a fantastic leafy green seed, something that I'm quite partial to, something that we actually eat a lot of. But we've also sown some peas. Now, peas are pretty much something that we sow all the time at the moment. They are a staple and they're one they've talked about a lot. Now, if you would like to help support us, then please head to the veggrowerpodcast.co.uk to find out more and sign up. We would love to have you there. Right, back to the gardening.
Well, you join me down on the allotment. It's a little bit windy down here, I'm afraid to say, but I'm hoping that's going to die down as we go on through this recording. If the wind does pick up any wind noise, I do apologise. Now, despite the wind, it has been a lovely sunny day, and I came down this allotment for a few hours, and I've tackled quite a few of the jobs that I wanted to do. One of the first jobs that I always do whenever I attend my allotment is just take a walk around and have a look and see what's going on. This is a really important step, I find, because it can tell you a lot about your allotment. I noted my garlic and my onions are looking magnificent. The straw mulch is really paying off at looking after those plants. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how well they turn out when it comes to harvest time. My apple tree has got these beautiful pink and white flowers that just look stunning, and of course we're hoping that's going to lead to plenty of fruits in the future. Now, my pear tree, the flowers are just starting to go over. They've flowered these beautiful white flowers, and now they've started to turn those flowers into little fruitlets. So it looks like we're going to get a good load of pears as well, as long as the weather continues to stay this way. I've also noticed there's quite a few poppy plants that have popped up all over my allotments. This happens quite often on my allotment. In the past, there are obviously seeds that have been dropped, or the wildflowers that used to run alongside, and the poppy seeds have found their way onto my allotment. I'm not complaining because I quite like poppies. I think they look stunning, and they of course help with the pollinators. So I've tended to leave those poppies to grow where they are. And that's certainly the case of what I'm doing this year. I'm just leaving them to bring in some of those pollinators. But one of my beds is full of another type of plant. I'm a bit of a quandary on what to do. And this is a green manure that I sowed back in autumn. This green manure is a legume called Tagets, and I am absolutely loving this plant. It has been growing quite slowly over the winter, but in the spring it's suddenly put on a load of growth. And it's now basically covered over that entire bed, which has meant any weeds trying to grow through are being shaded out. So I'm really happy with what it is doing. And best of all, because it is a legume, it's going to be putting nitrogen into the soil. And that's one of the great things that I love about this particular plant. But my quandary comes from the fact that this bed in about 4 weeks' time is going to be used for growing tomatoes and cucumbers in. And I'm a bit of a quandary of whether or not I just cut down those plants now or leave them until closer to the time. The reason I'm debating this is because of the fact that they are shading out any weeds. They're doing me a big job reducing the amount of work that I have to do. And I'm fine for them to continue growing there until I need the space. But is it going to be better to cut them down now and then start to use that bed? I don't know. I'm debating at the moment. What would you do in my position? After my walk around, anyway, what I needed to do was get some things planted. First on the list was, of course, my potatoes. This is a fourth variety of potato, and what I've been doing this year is sowing one variety each week. This variety this week is another second early called Wilger, and that's gone into the second half of the second early potatoes. Now, much like all my other potatoes, all I've done is dug a hole, added some potato fertiliser, dropped in the single seed potato and covered them over, and then I've covered them over with a load of compost. Now, last week I mentioned that I'd used up all the compost from my compost bin, and that was certainly the case, but I had one bin that I hadn't ventured into yet, and this was my attempt at making a hot bin on the allotment out of fridge doors. Basically, I made a compost bin by simply bolting a load of fridge doors together to form a compost bin, and then I used some more fridge doors as the lid. And the idea being, because the fridge door is an insulated material, all the compost and material going into it, as it heats up, that heat is getting trapped in and going on to help produce a good quality compost quite quick. Well, it has worked, I have to say, it has worked. We produced a brilliant quality compost. Excuse that wind at the moment. We produced a really good quality compost, really black, crumbly. I sometimes feel I'm often blowing my own trumpet when I talk about this compost, but it's something I'm really pleased about. And it produced it quite quickly, so I'm very, very, very happy with that. And I think we're going to have enough compost now just to finish off my potato beds. Not enough for the rest of the beds at the moment, but we'll worry about that later on. But yeah, my potatoes are now planted, my Wilger. Next week we start planting our main crop potatoes. Now, the next job I needed to do today was plant out some shallot sets. Now, I often grow shallots. I think in many ways they have many advantages over onions. I think they have a better taste. They're more milder taste. But they also can store for much longer than onions, 18 months. I just these days find it very difficult to be able to get hold of any shallot sets. And I've not had much luck growing shallots from seed. Last weekend I popped into a garden centre and I saw they were selling some shallots. So I bought a bag of shallots, a variety called Red Sun, and I've planted those in the onion bed down here on the allotment. We're going to see how well they get on, of course. They should do quite well. And what I'm hoping to do when I harvest the shallots is actually hold some back so that I can plant those again next year. That's the plan. Whether it happens or not, we will find out in the future. Now, moving on from that, the final job that I wanted to do today was my straw bale garden. As you know, last year we set up a straw bale garden where we took some straw bales, conditioned them using urea and water, and then we set about sowing those. And that area is actually really quite well. It was very successful last year. I've sowed some peas into the straw bale garden from last year, and what I noticed is the straw was really breaking down really well into that beautiful compost that I've often talked about. Well, the straw bale garden for this year we've set up and we've started conditioning that again by adding urea, which is difficult to get hold of or very expensive for various reasons. But it's what we're going to use. We're also going to add some nettle tea later on in the future as well. But we set it up and we're starting the conditioning phase. So what this means is that every few days we've got to add some urea and we've got to keep watering the straw bales as well. So off to a really, really good start there. And hopefully they're going to carry on producing some good straw bales. And I'm looking at really growing lots of squash in these beds this year. So it's been a really, really good week here on the allotment. We've got a lot done. I feel like we are really making progress, and I certainly feel like the growing season is kicking off. A lot more things that we can still be doing, and it's going to be such a busy time over the coming weeks. But for now, I'm very happy with what we've done. Well, I'm going to head on home and I will meet you in the podding shed where I want to talk to you about some of the pests that we seem to be getting at the moment. In the meantime, let's find out what's going on in the kitchen this week.
Chopping all the veggies, sizzle in the air. Chef Scott with the magic, smells are everywhere. Water starts to boil, onions hit the pan. Recipe of the week, let the feast begin. Cooking with Chef Scott, flavors come alive. Tune in every week for a tasty bite.
This week in the kitchen, I was having a practice run at making something that I can take into work in a couple of weeks' time for my birthday. This is a new thing to me. Working in an office, I've realised I have to bring in treats for my birthday for everyone to enjoy. And because, I'm a veg gardener, I want to use things in my kitchen. I came up with the idea of making rhubarb and ginger crumble bars. Now, this was just a really nice way to use rhubarb and turn it into something that everyone can enjoy with a cup of tea or just on the allotment at the same time. These are a lovely combination of crumbles in a bar. So first of all, we made the filling just by mixing together 400 grams of rhubarb, 75 grams of caster sugar, a teaspoon of grated fresh ginger and a tablespoon of water in a pan, just cooking gently until the rhubarb was soft. Then we made the crumble mixture just by rubbing together some flour, oats, butter, sugar and salt until it formed crumbs. Then we took 2/3 of that mixture and popped that into a base of a tin quite firmly to make the base. We then spooned over the rhubarb mixture and then sprinkled over the remaining crumble mixture, leaving some large lumps for texture. We baked that in the oven for about 30 minutes until it was nice and golden. Then we took it out the oven and left it to cool before we sliced into bars. And this was absolutely lovely. We thoroughly enjoyed it in our household. I'm looking forward to making more. Unfortunately, I think they may be eaten before they even get into work. But it's certainly given me a few ideas of something we can do. You will find the recipe over on the VegePod.co.uk if you do want to give it a try. And I highly recommend that you do. Well, I'm in the podding shed now, and sometimes the podding shed just feels the right place to sit down and tell you about some of the trials and tribulations. And for me, one of these battles has been with something known as aphids, these tiny little sap-sucking insects. They caused me problems last year, but they've caused more problems again this year. Now, it started with a few of my young seedlings. They just looked a little bit off. The signs were leaves were curling slightly, there was very slow growth, and this sticky residue that just made me think something is feeding here. I did think at first it was just our usual early season sulkiness, but then after close inspection I spotted them. These tiny white insects that are congregating all over my plants. Classic whitefly, which as I said is a type of aphid. And worst of all, these aphids absolutely love my tender young seedlings. Now, I'll be honest, a few of my seedlings didn't make it. They have been killed off by this aphids. So it is frustrating, it is annoying, especially when you've nurtured these plants from pretty much the moment the seed packet was opened. But what really caught my attention was where it was happening. Almost all the trouble seems to be happening from plants that I have growing in my kitchen, which is where I grow a lot of my young seedlings over the winter period. Now, I've moved a lot of my worst affected seedlings out to the shed, and to be honest, that alone made a noticeable difference. And that is because in the shed it's cooler at night, there's natural ventilation which helps slow down the aphids. In the kitchen, it's a bit of a luxury hotel for them really. The air is warm all 24 hours a day, it's sheltered, it's just the perfect conditions for aphids to multiply. So moving them out to the shed has made a big difference, and I think what we're going to have to look at doing is really getting all our seed sowing going on in the shed, less going on indoors in the future. Added to that, anyone who listens regularly to this podcast will know I'm not a fan of spraying things. even organic insecticides. They're just not really my style. I really don't like the idea of killing anything unneedlessly. Anything that is unnatural, I really don't like using. And I know organic insecticides are meant to be just as good, but also they're meant to be safe. It just doesn't work with me. My approach has always been to work with nature, not against it. So instead of reaching for a bottle of spray, so what I've been doing is what I can do manually. I've got a gentle spray of water just to knock them off bit by bit, leaf by leaf, checking as I went along and just letting the environment do the rest. But when I really put my mind into gear and I really started thinking about it, I remembered something from my visit to Autopot a couple of years ago. Now, in their development room, they had trays of ladybird larvae. And now these are proper little aphid eater machines. They're brilliant natural predators and they can clear a plant faster than any spray ever could. So I thought, let's look into that, shall we? Well, that's easier said than done. Ladybird larvae are expensive and at the moment they're not exactly easy to get hold of. I don't want to spend a fortune on something that might fly off the moment I open the packet, but it's certainly something to have in my back pocket. Nature has a funny way of helping you out when you need it, however. And when I was out in the garden the other day, I spotted a ladybird just wandering across one of my plants. Minded its own business, but I gently coaxed it onto my hand and walked it into my shed and released it amongst my seedlings. Now, I'm hoping this tiny polka-dotted superhero is going to devour all those aphids and maybe even lay some ladybird larvae. It feels right. There's no chemicals, there's no fuss, just letting the natural predator do what it's evolved to do. Ladybirds can eat dozens of aphids a day and their larvae eat even more. If you've ever seen ladybird larvae, they look nothing like the adult. They're these tiny little black, almost alligator looking, but they are relentless. They devour aphids. Now, aphids aren't a sign of failure, of course. They're just opportunists. They turn up when the conditions suit them and they disappear again when the balance shifts. Moving the seedlings, improving the airflow, introducing a predator, just one of these changes can hopefully tip the balance back into my favour. And it's been a bit of an adventure this week trying to figure this out. I've read about growing mint and other herbs with them, but I've got mint growing amongst my seedlings. It's not worked at all. So ladybirds for me are the way forward. Of course, ladybirds can easily get out of my shed should they want to. They're not locked in there per se. I really want to set up a proper ladybird home inside my shed to keep these fantastic insects from going on in there. So, if you're dealing with aphids right now, you are not alone. It is that time of year, but keep an eye on things. Give your plants the best conditions that you can get and give nature a hand when it can. If you've got any tips or tricks that you want to share, then please do share them with us. You can get in touch simply by emailing me, richard@theveggrowpodcast.co.uk, and I'd love to hear from you. Well, we are at that point where we're coming to the end of this week's show. If you've enjoyed this podcast, then please rate and review on your podcast provider. I've got no ratings to talk about again this week. I'm sure next week we will have plenty. If you've enjoyed this podcast, you want to help support the work that we do, then please consider becoming a member of the Veg Grower Podcast Supporters Club. Details on that at theveggrowerpodcast.co.uk, which is of course our website. Now, on our website you can also leave us a comment on the bottom of a blog post, or you can leave us a voicemail just by simply clicking on the Speak Pipe link. Really easy to do, and it's always good to play voices into this podcast. As I just mentioned, you can email me, richard@theveggrowpodcast.co.uk, and of course you can also find me on social media. We will be back again next time, so until then, please take care.